And Catherine, you're first to sign up. You will be first to go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Catherine Taylor. I'm the Rhode Island State Director for AARP, and I'm very pleased to testify in favor of House Bill 5100. I've submitted a written testimony, but just want to share, just put a face on the folks that this bill will support older adults who are homeless. According to a 2023 U.S. Department of Health and Human Services report, older adults are the fastest growing age group of those experiencing homelessness. And in fact, Crossroads, Rhode Island reported that the percentage of older Rhode Islanders, 65 and older, experiencing homelessness increased by 33% in 2023. We all know that older adults who are homeless are just not as resilient as younger people, much more likely to not survive exposure to severe weather, and so this bill is really important for them. An analysis of Census Bureau data conducted by AARP and Statista estimates that between 2023 and 2027, so going forward, over 800 older Rhode Islanders over 65 will face eviction. And in addition, we don't know where these folks will go because the 2023 AARP Long-Term Services Sports Scorecard ranked Rhode Island 51st in the nation, or dead last, for the availability of housing for older adults. And we fear that this trend of homelessness will only increase in years to come. The analysis conducted by AARP and Statista also estimated that between 2023 and 2027, a total of 300 additional Rhode Islanders will experience homelessness. This bill is really important to offer shelter to these folks, and I thank you for your consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions for Ms. Taylor? Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate your testimony. We'll now move to Bernie.
I'm Bernie Gaudreau. I'm a volunteer and a member of the Rhode Island Homeless Advocacy Project. It's a program that Eric Hirsch, whom you all know, has been working on this issue for 30 years or more. He's formed that group, and we meet every Wednesday at Matheson Street Church at 12 o'clock. And the group is about 20 people that meet, and most of the group are people who have experienced homelessness, and so they're speaking from current experiences, and some who are currently homeless. And then there are other people who are involved, like myself. What spurred me into this was, I was going to Aldi's over on Newport Avenue, and I noticed this very old-looking man sitting on a sidewalk. It was 22 degrees out, and he had a sign, and he said he was homeless. So I gave him a little bit of money, and I asked him, where are you staying? He's staying in a tent off Newport Avenue. And he said he needed $27 every 2 days to be able to buy a bottle of gas to be able to heat his tent. I saw him a few days ago, and I said, how'd you do in that cold weather? He said, I just stayed in my tent, and I stayed under the blankets, and I wasn't able to come out. He was too cold. And we need outreach to people like that to welcome them into a better situation. He's certainly going to perish, if not this year, next, if he continues to live outside, 66 years old. This is the worst it's been that anyone can remember. There are hundreds of people that are without shelter right now. You can see them in tents along bike paths, on the Greenway in East Providence. You can see them in the woods, on the Turner Reservoir. And we have to be able to do better than that. We can't accept people living in tents or outside, in fact, dying. So at this meeting we go to every Wednesday, I learned last Wednesday that we had 3 people perish in Providence that they know, the group knows. A man was found on North Main Street, frozen to death at a bus stop, and then 2 others in Kennedy Plaza. And these are human lives. I think sometimes I think people would have more compassion if it was a pet or an animal out there. And I think quite often people don't believe that this is going on, and it is going on, and it's breaking people's hearts and making people really crazy. So glad that Echo Village is going to be opening next Tuesday. It's probably 9 months longer than it should have been to get there. And at least next week there'll be 45 more units. People can stay, but there's still hundreds of people that are not being sheltered right now. So this bill will really make it possible for many of our cities and towns to be able to put an emergency action into place and shelter their homeless. Warwick, West Warwick, Cranston, South County, the homeless folks are all over the state. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Boudreau? Yes, Richard Fascia, please. Rep. Fascia.
Mr. Boudreau, am I to understand, and maybe this question is for the three of you.
Richard.
Yes, sure.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was.
It's counterintuitive, I get it.
I'm a new guy.
Yep.
In any event, am I to understand that Echo Village will be exclusive to elderly homeless?
No, I think it's going to be to individuals, all right?
Individuals?
Not families, I don't think.
No, it's through the coordinated entry system. They're doing referrals to Echo Village, I believe.
A number of individuals per structure that has been formulated.
One.
No. Okay. And who is House of Hope going to be managing?
They are managing it.
They're
Yes.
going to be managing this development. Okay, so we don't know how many people are going to be per structure, and
No, there'll be one per structure,
one
so
person
it's
per structure.
45 at any given time.
Okay,
Yeah.
we don't know for sure if they're going to be all elderly, they could be younger. Do we know yet if the overall project is going to be restricted access to just those people who are assigned to?
I believe so.
Okay. And how these people, how is it going to be determined who amongst the hundreds of people who are homeless on any given night? How is it determined who?
Yeah, that's really a question for House of Hope. They're managing that. They have $1 million
Have
contract.
any information on that?
Excuse me?
I was just wondering if you had any
Well,
information.
we don't, but they've been working on this for a long time. They've hired up their staff. They're ready to go. It's a good question. I wonder how they can choose.
Okay.
It's my understanding also that it's a consistent 45 people. It won't be night to night. That's the beauty of what's going to happen there, is they'll have support services ongoing until they're secure permanent housing.
So it'll be semi-permanent for that.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. We're going to have Nancy Craig next. Catherine and Bernie, if you guys are all set, if you could relinquish your seats, if you'd like to have Pat Ford and Katie West come forward.
Hello, my name is Nancy Cray, and I'm a member of the Rhode Island Housing First Coalition. I didn't have time to really study the three bills, but this one in particular, but from what I've heard today, we would certainly be in favor and supportive of this attention to the tremendous need that we have. The state legislature deemed that it was necessary to study the increased number of Rhode Islanders who were becoming homeless when they conducted a study in 2010. As a result of that study, the General Assembly passed a statute indicating that the legislative findings of that study, it passed a statute, whereby, this is in quotes, that there exists in this state an undetermined number of homeless persons, many of whom suffer from chronic mental illness and disability, and that this condition exists among families and individuals of all age groups without regard to ethnic or racial heritage or sex. The existence of this condition is declared to be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the homeless individuals themselves and to the state. That's direct quote from the statute. That was in 2010. Along with those findings, the legislature created a permanent council to be called the Interagency Council on Homelessness, consisting of 18 to 20 members, along with a permanent advisory council made up of advocates, homeless individuals, veterans, and community members. The duties of the council were to participate in the process, and this is a quote, participate in the process of developing a strategic plan to end homelessness that will serve to reduce the number of homeless individuals and families in Rhode Island, end of quote. That is what the council was charged to do. That, however, has not happened. The number of homeless individuals living in Rhode Island has increased exponentially. The council appears to have made a good start between 2011 and 2016. However, they took a hiatus from that work for 8 years, only starting up again in December of 2024. It is what it appears to be, a lack of urgency. It is a dereliction of duty. Granted that the members who currently sit on the council were not those who may have been on the council in 2017 when they stopped meeting. However, who is to be held accountable for this? Should not the Interagency Council on Homelessness have been more aggressive in acknowledging the critical need of more shelter beds and expediting the opening of Echo Village sooner? As Bernie said, it's very exciting to hear that they're going to have the ribbon cutting next Tuesday. However, this plan for shelter beds began back in 2022, where Cranston rejected it. The pandemic cannot be blamed when the council stopped meeting long before the pandemic existed. If any of these bills can expedite the process for getting additional pallet shelters opened around the state and decreasing the number of people living on the street, please pass these bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes. Representative Carson, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to ask you, I was listening, but I didn't really retain exactly. Can you repeat for us what was supposed to happen and who was supposed to set up the council? Can you go over that a little bit more with me? Was a specific department in the state level assigned that task?
Yes, the General Assembly passed the statute indicating that what the legislative foundings came up with were that the number of undetermined numbers of homeless persons, many of whom suffer from chronic mental illness and disability, and that this condition exists among families and individuals of all age groups without regard to ethnic or racial heritage or sex. And that this was determined to be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of homeless individuals themselves and to the state. So they created a permanent council, which was...
Who was supposed to set the council up? Is there any language there? Because a council gets created and someone in state government actually has to make the council happen. And that's the question I'm asking. And I'm asking that because I've grown increasingly frustrated with the fact that we pass laws that don't get implemented.
Right.
And this is just another one, which I have a list, by the way.
The agency was established, one of whom, the first one listed, there's 18 people listed, different departments. One of
That
whom,
would be on the council.
yes.
But it doesn't say who should staff the meetings, like the Department of Health shall organize the whatever. Now, and your first name again, I'm going to read your testimony.
Nancy.
Okay, Nancy. Again, we pass laws that don't get implemented properly, and I'm growing frustrated with
The
that.
Department of Administration is hereby directed to
That's the
provide
answer to the
suitable
question.
quarters
That's the
and
answer.
staff for the commission.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Nancy? Okay. Thank you very much, Nancy, for your testimony. We're going to have Jairson here. Yeah. If you could take a seat, and Pat, you will go next, please. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, my goodness, sorry. By the way, the premise of my brief speech here is to prove that with the onset of legislation being promoted by the Speaker, we can hopefully begin to clear a regulatory path where mutual aid organizations, often of a volunteer nature, can start to assume a major role in resolving the homeless crisis. Good evening, my name is Patrick Ford, and I'm testifying in my capacity as Executive Director of LibertarianMutualAid.org, an all-volunteer, providence-based mutual aid organization. Our motto, we are not from the government, we are actually here to help. I rise in support of the Speaker's legislation. Currently, LibertarianMutualAid.org supplies bulk bottled water, Narcan, test strips, wound care kits, dental kits, used clothing, as well as bulk food directly to the homeless encampments, food pantries, and the sidewalks of northern and central Rhode Island. Our origin, a chance encounter at a Charles Street encampment in 2023. Covering a press conference, I met an emaciated young man who asked for a bottle of water, unaware that I had 2 pallets of bottled water in my van, bound for a food pantry. Realizing to my eternal horror that none of the 30 or so residents of this encampment had any source of clean drinking water, We delivered 40 packs, much like you get at a wholesale club, to each tent, a practice we continue to this day. We now deliver water to over 30 locations. Incredibly, despite millions of dollars spent by the state of Rhode Island, the state provides none. Currently, LMA receives no government funding. The most read word in certain not-for-profit circles, we volunteer. Alongside countless Rhode Island organizations like the Milagros Project, Food Not Bombs of Providence, St. Edward's, and of course, if saints walk among us, the Matheson Street Church. And that's to name just a few. By the way, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that a number of folks in Rhode Island government, some of whom are sitting in this very chamber, have been extremely generous to LMA. We thank you. 100% of our donations have gone to supporting the water project, as well as bulk food donations to a variety of food pantries about Rhode Island. But here's the important point, mutual aid. For those of you not familiar with the term, mutual aid is where volunteer organizations coalesce around issues of the community, working together to solve the great challenges of our day. They can be, they should be, and they must be part of the solution to solving the homelessness crisis. Financially capable volunteers and donated supplies can remove a significant burden from financially challenged cities and towns. Spiritually, the engagement of volunteers serves as a tool to educate the community as to the depths and nature of the crisis, while helping to develop both sympathy and empathy. A real-time example, what I call the Da Vinci Center Polar Vortex pop-up homeless shelter, that was literally just opened just days ago. In the 24 hours following the friendly takeover of the Providence City Council chambers, a group of community organizations operating under the direction of Better Lives, organizations like Food Not Bombs Providence, Libertarian Mutual Aid, Project Weber Renew, and the Shelter Church, created a safe, secure, warm shelter with full nutritious, prepared on-site, multi-course daily meals at the Da Vinci Center on Charles Street in Providence. It was safe, well-maintained, there was no violence, there was no drugs, there was just community, good food, and warmth to people who for a significant amount of time had none. But unfortunately in Rhode Island, certain barriers to exist to, if you will, to mutual aid. It's sort of a vicious circle. Taxes, utilities, and living expenses are high in Rhode Island, leaving many folks with little to donate. What's always astonishing, by the way, is that some of the folks who have the least are the most generous. Around communities that face significant challenges, the south and west side of Providence, places like Woonsocket. Additionally, more egregiously, nonprofit salaries and state salaries surrounding the homeless space are obscene. Crossroads, where the CEO made in excess of $373,000. Community organization called CCA in Woonsocket, where the CEO made $192,000. The East Bay Community Action Program.
Pat, I'm sorry. I'm giving you a very wide berth here.
I understand.
We're testifying on the legislation, and this is sounding more like an editorial. So
Okay, well, I'll
wrap it up.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. Finally, there are significant financial and regulatory obstacles to overcome in order to simply help the poor. Fire regulations effectively differentiating between the ability to sleep on a bed versus upright in a chair are a major determinant in future health. Finally, the result, more homelessness, more tent cities, early deaths due to the cumulative impact of sleeping outside, and terrible nutrition. It is my profound hope that legislation like this has the potential not only to drastically increase the scope and speed of our response to this crisis, but also that this legislation will begin to clear a path for increased participation by mutual aid organizations to participate in solving the homelessness crisis. In other words, simply put, government at a certain point needs to get out of the way. The response is not just inadequate, but a total failure. And I know this because we're boots on the ground, and we visit homeless encampments around northern Rhode Island. So let's start this as a first step, but then let's also move to a common sense removal of obstacles so that more organizations in the aggregate, like mine and many others, can be involved in the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Are there any questions? Okay, we're going to move on to Katie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Katie West. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Housing Network of Rhode Island. I'm here in the stead of our Executive Director, Melina Lodge. The Housing Network, we have several members in our membership who provide permanent housing, temporary shelter, and services for people experiencing homelessness, and we're here in support of this bill. I think we all I hope that we all can acknowledge the need. It's been extremely cold. I was freezing walking up the hill to get into this building today in that wind, and cannot imagine being outside in that for an extended period of time. And we unfortunately know that there have been deaths. I don't think any member of this assembly finds that acceptable. We have many providers in the space who are working very hard to provide emergency shelter for people who need it, but there is overcapacity or undercapacity with staffing and resources, rather. Overcapacity of people, undercapacity of resources. And rapidly deployable shelters or rapidly deployable units or SAVE units are a solution not just to supplement that system of congregate shelter, but to also meet people where they're at. There's many reasons why congregate shelter may not be the most appropriate for somebody, whether they have PTSD, if they're a couple, they don't want to be separated, if they have a companion animal. And so these are solutions that can help, again, meet people where they're at and can be deployed rapidly within a particular community. And I think we've all seen when things are new and innovative, maybe not as mainstream yet, we can see what happens when there's not a clear process or pathway, for example, within the code structure. This bill, creates a process for that and a conversation about that. We support that and think that's important. We did provide written testimony where we highlighted some points for potential clarification within the legislation, so I won't get into detail of those because you do have them. We are certainly more than happy to work with the sponsors of this legislation. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the speaker, who is my representative in his championing of housing as a priority, and the good folks who are supporting that as well. So with that said, we support the bill and we urge the committee to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Are there any questions for Katie? Thank you. Before we move on, clerk, if you could note that Representative Edwards has joined us. Would you like to be recorded in front of holding the bills?
I would, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to Jairson. Welcome to the House.
Is this on? I'm just making sure this is on.
There you go, you got it.
So yeah, you can call me Jair. Basically, I came here. I can be considered speaking on behalf of the Black Political Action Committee of Rhode Island. The president, his name is Joseph Buchanan, also known as Joe Buck. But really, I came here as a person that is really disappointed. There's been so many opportunities for people to get housing, like for at least to have this chance to be out of the cold, and it hasn't happened. And the idea that fire codes are what's keeping people from freezing to death is ridiculous. My friend, his cousin froze to death like 3 weeks ago, and there's always, people say there's always ways out of getting into that, but sometimes people can be their own worst enemy, and having a chance to have a safe place where no one's watching them or pushing them, it can mean a lot to somebody. And I went to the Johnston Town Hall that happened recently, and that was supposed to just be for low-income or affordable housing, 252 units. It was changed into a police safety complex, which was supposedly an open conversation, but that had been working in development for almost six weeks already. This country and Rhode Island knows that we have a real crisis when it comes to housing. And the concept that your community doesn't care about you at all when, you lose your home, and we live in conditions like this where we all know every winter you will die if you live outside. And we still don't have a sense of compassion to make sure someone isn't going to be in that. To me, it just does not make sense. It doesn't matter, even if someone isn't ready to work or to, move forward in their life, that consigns them to death. That to me does not make sense. And I really, as a young person, am trying to understand why our community isn't interested in trying to make sure if you lose your home, you have a place to go and a starting point. You know, it's not just students that deserve universities, campuses that educate them and bring them to a better place. All of us, up until the point that we, exit this world, if we need it, deserve a chance to learn and be around positive energy. And the idea that our government doesn't understand that, to me, it just doesn't make sense. That's everything I have to say.
Thank you, Jair. Are there any questions for Jair? Representative Speaker, will comment?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your testimony, and I'm sorry for your loss. I appreciate your disappointment in the process. I'm disappointed and frustrated as well. I would, however, note that there are lots of people who devote a lot of energy and a lot of compassion. People like Katie and Pat are working out there. This particular instance was truly an example of a bureaucratic tangle. Unfortunate, and this bill is a step that should have been taken a long time ago to untangling that tangle. So again, there are lots of compassionate folks out there in the communities working on this. So again, I do thank you for your testimony, and I share this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Thorpe.
I also want to thank you because that's very compelling testimony, and we are working on it. And I know it's slow, it's too slow for all of us who are up here who've been dealing with this, and we want to get people housed, believe me, in our local areas and around statewide, obviously. I know everybody's been working on it, maybe not the town of Johnston, which I think calling them out is appropriate.
I was the only person that went there and did testimony. They actually, when I walked in, I don't know if I can say this, but they weren't letting us in, and they cited the amount of space that was in the building.
I heard that.
When someone left, they would let one person in, and I managed I was the last person they let in. And on my way in, I saw a policeman say to his chief, they're coming in when someone lets them out, when someone leaves. We shouldn't let anyone leave till this is done. I saw a cop say that, and I was like, he did that in front of me, ignored me. And then I was the only person that spoke. I was in the newspaper. It was crazy.
Thank you for doing what you're doing. Keep going out there and speaking.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, I would just like to make a comment. That will close the hearing. I'd like to make a comment that Randy Rossi from the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns is also in favor of the bill. He submitted written testimony. And I will close the hearing on House Bill 5100. We will now have Representative McEntee, Councilman Marin,